Hey, welcome back, guys. So this is a fairly simple thing to do. I just figured I would share while I'm doing it anyway, and before I move on to the next part review. What I'm talking about is relocating the buttons or switches on your video transmitters. In my specific case, I upgraded to the Cricut Pro, and the buttons are now located underneath where I mount my GoPro Session, so I wanted to relocate the switches, which I've already done on this one right here. And you may have some other reason, maybe your switches are hard to get to. It usually isn't that big of a deal because how often do you change your bands and frequencies, but these actually don't start transmitting until you hold the button down, which is a very handy feature. It sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a really good thing, especially if you race. And I have like an entire list of reasons of why I'm doing this. And I know someone's going to say, well, JC, why don't you just use the TBS, blah, 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 whatever it's called, video transmitter. You can just make it start transmitting with a flip of a switch, change your bands and frequencies with your transmitter. I have an entire reason of why I'm not using that either. So let's just jump right into it. I've already taken this one apart, taken the bolts out at least. And there we go. Let's pop this in my helping hand. First, let me explain. You need to find there's 4 legs on these switches, right? You need to figure out which ones have continuity between them once the button is pressed. So if I take my multimeter, set it to the continuity mode. If I test both of these, I get continuity. So that means these are actually on the same. They don't look. It looks like these are on the same side and these are on the same side, but actually these are on the same side and these are on the same side. But if I do this and then press the button down, if I can hold it straight, there we go. And once you hold this button down or press it in, whatever your video transmitter is like, that's going to complete that circuit, which will change that band frequency or make it start transmitting, whatever that button is used for. So let's throw some flux paste on it real quick. Now I'm going to hit it with a hot air gun. I'm trying to avoid heating up this JST connector. I really don't want to melt it. I'd rather avoid that. Okay, switch is removed. I could remove this one as well, but I'm going to leave this one on. This is actually my band and frequency switch. I don't use it that often, but this one is to make my transmitter start transmitting for that extra feature that these have. So like I said, I either want to use both of these or both of these, either or. I'm actually going to use the ones more towards the center. I'm going to add a little bit more solder to these pads. Take some 30 gauge silicone wire. I'm going to tin the ends. Now I'll solder both of these to both pads. It doesn't matter. The color of the wire doesn't matter. Whichever way you do it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. You just want to use these 2 pads or these 2 pads. And the reason I say that is because we're only completing a circuit, so there really is no positive and negative, no polarity, no nothing. Okay, so now let me throw it back in the case, and then take these wires, run it through the hole. Oops, wrong hole. That's what she said. Okay, let me screw these back in. Let me throw this back on this plate. And once again, run these wires through the right hole this time. Oh, one thing I forgot. I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue inside this hole just to help hold these wires in place, make sure they don't rip off the pads. I would have forgot to do that if I didn't accidentally burn my hand on this while I was sitting over here. Okay, now we need a switch. You can use the switch that we just pulled off that I already lost. No, it's right here. Of course, I gotta be fancy with everything, so I'll be using a switch like this. I just had these laying around, got them off of eBay. I'll leave a link to these in the description. Figure out how much wire you want and shorten it. I would recommend going a little longer than you think, just in case. It's always easier to take away than it is to add. So about that much. I'm going to tin both sides of the switch. tin both my wires. Take some really small heat shrink, pop some on both wires. Then solder the switch onto the wire. I'm going to do the other side. And now heat up the heat shrink. There's our switch. So now I don't have to ever take my GoPro off. Let's test it out. Alright, let's give it some juice. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm gonna turn the light off. So I've got my band in frequency, but it's not transmitting until I hold the button down on this particular video transmitter. Holding it down, and boom, there we go. It's transmitting, and I can select my power output. We got 200 milliwatt, 600 milliwatt, 25 milliwatt, and back to 200 without moving my GoPro. That's going to do it for this one, guys. You don't have to use this just on video transmitters. This can be applied to anything. Use your imagination and have fun. Make your life easier. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.